The long jog down the pipe gave Vincent time to think. He didn't particularly want to, but he was trying not to get too focused on the distant sounds of weapon fire echoing through the pipe. If he was going to get this multi-species team to work, he was going to need to be more selective. He had trusted Frey's choices for the team because he assumed she'd pick the best candidates for the job. What if those had been the only candidates for the job? He should probably start having applicants get vetted by Mach. He wasn't just a counselor for show, after all. But then again, that would take time, and Vincent was dealing with a lot of shit at the moment. Vincent quietly cursed as he kept moving along the pipe. Why did life have to work like this? Over the years since he'd been freed from the worms, there were plenty of times when he could have dedicated days to the task of properly establishing and training a team like this. But he didn't know he needed it. Then again, he also wouldn't have been able to get it authorized until Latero died. Why was it when things got bad, everything happened all at once? Why couldn't he have discovered this plot months ago and stopped it before it ever made it this far? Probably for the same reason he was having trouble stopping the Wardens now. They were organized and several steps ahead of him. Unless, of course, this was somehow all part of their plan. He couldn't imagine they could plan for everything that happened, but he wondered about Bryan's hand. The raid that had started this entire chain of events had seemed like an entirely normal drug den, aside from that secure door. With all the forces involved he had encountered, though, it seemed highly unlikely that they would have entrusted the safety of that package to anyone less than one of their private commando teams. Fuck! He growled out as he shook his head. It all just pissed him off. He vastly preferred normal criminals. They were much easier to understand. This whole government and cult-connected conspiracy shit had him second-guessing himself constantly. The possibility that he was playing into someone else's plan pissed him off to no end. What would he do if that was the case? What could he do? He couldn't let the preacher continue. He couldn't let the rising unrest continue. And he couldn't just sit around and wait. When this was all over, he'd take a fucking vacation. But first, he needed to end it. Following the map in his mask, he came out of the pipe in some sort of under-construction pumping station. There were all sorts of valves and pressure gauges, but they were all at zero right now. He looked around for a moment and followed a walkway outside into the opening between this block and the next. Mach's silver-armored satyr were waiting for him. The craft they were using was one he'd never seen before. It was very narrow, with a skeleton of sorts hanging beneath the engines and cockpit. He was about to ask how the damn thing worked when he saw the nearest satyr lean back against the skeleton system, which grabbed him and strapped him in. They hung beneath it, legs dangling. Come on, Shade. Are you nervous? The satyr asked, as the rest of the squad got picked up by the skeleton arms. I just didn't know how it worked, Vincent grumbled, before turning around and facing the wall, then leaning back away from the walkway into nothingness. His stomach lurched as the arms grabbed him, and then he felt himself get secured in some sort of seat framework he couldn't see. They'd be able to drop off very quickly, but they were exposed to fire. Perhaps the dragons didn't care if a few of their cannon fodder got picked off? So, what's the plan here? He asked, expecting to speak with the satyr. You'll be dropped off beneath the building you identified as the preacher's hideout, he heard Mach say over his comm. A small team is waiting for you, and we'll raid the place together. Sounds good. He nodded as the vehicle started flying up between the blocks. It was very strange to have his legs dangling beneath him, and feel the air sweeping around him, compared with standing in the doorway of the usual Yervesh craft. None of the satyrs seemed concerned, though, so he pushed the thoughts to the back of his mind. No, my involvement cannot be made clear yet. I have a new suit waiting for you. It's very expensive, so I hope you're able to return it to me in 5 pieces or less, but I'll take whatever I can get. A new suit? What are we talking about here? If you expect me to raid a heavily fortified hostile structure all on my own, I'm going to need something good. Vincent was a little surprised to hear he was being expected to do this on his own. But then again, that seemed to be everyone's plan from the moment they discovered him on the ship. It's not quite as good as being invisible, but it's the closest we've come. Due to the circumstances regarding the preacher's activities, I highly doubt taking him in alive is possible anyway, so you should be able to end this on your own once you find him. Vincent had to agree with the dragon that he had no intention of taking this fucker in alive, but he was still a little hesitant. I still don't understand what's going on with the lack of support. We now have proof that this asshole is broadcasting from a certain building. Regardless of who owns it, why can't we bust in there guns blazing? Well, for one thing, there are quite a number of civilians in there. I didn't mean it like that, Vincent huffed. I know, but in short, because the business of draconic politics is very convoluted. I'll explain it to you when I have a chance, but just understand that right now I'm doing everything I can without risking further instability. Politics shouldn't stop progress, Vincent grumbled. And I try not to let it. After all, think about how we often talk. Vincent frowned. What does that have to do with anything? I'm one of the most powerful figures in the Draconic Senate. Have you ever waited long to speak with me? Or had to deal with runaround from a secretary? Or my secretary's secretary? Think about Kuina. She is literally the most powerful Yovesh in the Union, and you can just walk into her office and speak with her. You've been to her private residence without formal invitation. None of this is normal, Vincent. You're not some typical detective. You're very much an oddity. You're connected to the very height of power, yet tasked with suicidal missions. And now you're being given a team. You didn't think this was normal, did you? Vincent knew Mock was right. There were hundreds of thousands of Yervesh in the city, and he somehow had a personal line with their leader. No other detective had as much access as he did. In fact, most sector chiefs didn't. It just felt strange to be someone in a position like this. He had always figured things would feel different, or there's some sort of declaration to make it obvious, when he became a person of importance. But that's not how life works. There was no celebratory music and confetti each time he reached a new point in his life. It just kept going, and he had to keep up, or he'd trip and fall flat on his face. With a sigh, Vincent nodded. Okay, you've got a point. I understand only a fraction of what I'm involved in, so it makes sense I don't really get what's going on. Let's just get this done so I can get my team to safety. He'd purposely switched his comm channels when he was in the tunnel so he wouldn't hear what was going on with his team. He'd need to focus, and if he was worried about every firefight they got in, then he wouldn't be able to do his job. And right now, that was even more important. I'm sure you'd like a vacation once this is all over, but you'll need to stay focused for now, Vincent. The suit is waiting for you. I'm sure you'll get your target. Vincent smirked a little as Mock echoed his thoughts from earlier. Thanks, Mock. My pleasure. The dragon signed off while the vehicle kept moving. They had a lot of distance to cover getting up to the nicer parts of the city, and he switched his comm over once more. Handler. Loud and clear, Phoenix. He heard Cavazor reply. Do we have any more info about the building, or details on that broadcast of his? Vincent needed to get prepared if he was going in alone. I have blueprints from a few decades ago. If the building has changed, they haven't done anything major. I'll download them to your mask now. As for the broadcast, he's got repeaters in a wide number of supposedly secure stations. I'll be sending out tech teams to clear them up once he's down. When I send you a signal, can you turn on our own broadcast? He asked as he started to think things over. What broadcast? Let me talk to Kuina. What for? Just let me talk to her. Make it a conference call or whatever so you can listen in and get an idea of what I want. Yervesh hesitated for a moment before replying. All right, patching us through. They had to wait a moment before he heard Kuina speak up. I've stepped away from the council. I don't have too much time to talk, but what do you need? I want you to prepare a speech. When I kill the preacher, I want to start our own broadcast. I'll say some things if able right away, but otherwise I'll get a signal out, and I want you to broadcast. This guy was reaching out to the hearts and minds of the lower city, the poor and disenfranchised and all that. I want you to highlight the programs in place to give them a chance. Right now, the preacher is making them think. They have a choice between being poor forever or killing Yervesh and getting rich. Make it clear they have other options. Of course they have other options, Kriina said, seeming confused. But how many of them know that? I mean that seriously. I don't see or hear any programs or announcements or anything, so I've got no idea. Which might be the problem. There's what? 1 billion people below level 30? Roughly 750 million live beneath what we would consider the socioeconomic divide. Cavazor chimed in, who Vincent had nearly forgotten about. That's a lot of fucking people in this pyramid, you know. I'm only dealing with the core sectors on each level, so I'm only ever going to see a fraction of what's going on down here. If you can just convince people that they have better options than fighting their own government, I'm confident crime will stop. There was a pause before Quino replied. All right. I'll have to check scholarship numbers and see what programs are underperforming, but that's not really connected with Yovesh authority. It doesn't matter who's in charge of it. Whoever they aren't doing their job, Vincent stressed. You can either try to fight all of them in the streets, one firefight at a time, or you can try to convince them that fighting and dying isn't worth it. How bad is it? It's quite bad. The council is discussing martial law. I'm arguing against it, but obviously I can't tell them why I suspect this problem will soon pass, the Yovesh woman responded with a sigh. Well, I'll do what I can. Stall them if you need to. You'll hopefully hear from me soon, Vincent promised. Now all I have to do is explain to the others why I'm trying to write a speech and debate the pros and cons of martial law at the same time, Kuyina said with that same sigh. Ask our mutual friend. I'm sure he's got speechwriters around somewhere, Vincent recommended, to which Kuyina nodded for a moment. I'm not thrilled about having one of his kind write my speech, but it'll have to do. I'll speak with you later. She signed off as Cavazor spoke up again. I'll coordinate with her assistant to get something in place and ready. Send me word when you want me to override the preacher's signal. Vincent nodded as his handler spoke. Sounds good. Hopefully this will all work out soon. With that, the call was ended, and Vincent glanced around the city, whipping past them. It was strange to be hanging from beneath the flyer like this, as he saw the satyr rattling around in their frames in front of him. How close are we? Just a few minutes out, the satyr's squad leader replied. How do we get out of this damn thing anyway? When you see us bend our legs and let go of the frame, do your best to do the same, came the reply as Vincent frowned. They were in some sort of cargo section beneath a very large continuous block, and he saw the landing pad ahead. Just as the satyr described, the others bent their legs and let go of the frame to hold on to their weapons. Vincent did his best to mimic them, and found himself worried as the vehicle approached the pad quickly. They seemed to be going much too fast. At what seemed like the last second, though, the pilot eased it back, the framework shifted, and Vincent found himself dropping about half an inch onto his feet before the flyer was off and away. Is the speed worth the lack of protection? He asked aloud, looking around at the satyr squad. If you're using one of these in a hostile zone, you're doing it wrong, the squad leader replied simply, which made Vincent snort. He followed them away from the landing pad into a cargo warehouse of sorts. Instead of finding many crates, however, there was another satyr squad set up around some sort of sealed container with a door in the side. It was roughly 5 meters by 5 meters. So, I'm supposed to get some special suit? He more said aloud than specifically directing the question. The satyrs nodded and motioned at the entrance, so he shrugged and stepped in through some sort of plastic slats and a brief blast of cool air. Inside, he was in a very clean-looking room, with 2 shelves, and a metal rack hanging a shimmering grayish suit. For some reason, there was also a floating helmet. Wait. Zerny, is there any reason you're trying to hide from me? Zeno appeared with another of her crazy grins. I was trying to finish setting it up before you got here. Seems that won't be the case. Yeah, well, there's some very serious shit going on right now, so I'd appreciate if you didn't try to dick around with me. You could see the confused look on her face. It's a saying meaning to mess with someone. So, this is the suit? Yes! The Xeno moved away from the suit, helmet still in her hands. It's all prepared for you. Once you're inside, the controls are very simple. Of course, you'll have limited offensive capabilities, but I think the stealth will more than make up for it.
Once you get out of your clothes, we'll get you in there and I'll explain.
She stood there staring at him, with a smile as he blinked back and looked around the room. There's no changing room as far as I can see.
In a secure pod? I'd think not.
She made some sort of clicking noise he figured was amusement. Finally, he shrugged as he realized he wasn't getting any privacy, and started to take off his harness, weapons, and then clothes, setting them on the shelves as he did. He knew Zerny had seen his dead body plenty of times during her research, so he shouldn't be shy. But overriding a lifetime of cultural norms wasn't that easy. He was just happy that she didn't get grabby or touchy once he was down to his boxer briefs. All right, what now?
Have you ever worn a clean suit? No? Well, you start with one leg, then the other, then put both arms in and shrug it up over your shoulders,
she instructed as he unzipped the back of the suit and started to get into it. So, like a wetsuit, he mentioned as he tugged the fancy material up around one leg, then the other.
I'm assuming you mean a protective layer designed for use with the ocean, and not a normal suit that has gotten wet?
He stared at her, which gave her the answer.
Yes, I suppose like that as well. I wouldn't know. Juvians can't swim.
He made a mental note of that, in case he ever needed to truly avoid her. Once he had pulled the suit up and on, he looked down over his body. The gray wasn't really threatening, and he didn't see many places to stash gadgets or weapons. So far, I'm not exactly impressed. If I need to confront someone, I like my usual punch, I suppose.
Here, this might help,
she said and handed him the helmet. He pulled it on, realizing that it was more of a flat faceplate. There wasn't an attachment for him to use the adrenaline inhaler like the other mask. He was about to ask why this would help when she pulled a small mirror out of her white coat and held it up for him to see. The faceplate was displaying a ghostly visage of a grinning human skull. I like it, he said immediately.
You know, most researchers who've worked with your bodies have commented that they've never seen an intimidating skeleton before yours. Even when dead, many species find you threatening.
He wasn't sure if she was telling the truth or just trying to psych him up, but it was working. All right, how does this thing work?
The same as your normal mask. The active camouflage has a few options once you select it. So long as you don't sprint and stay out of multi-angle bright lights, you'll be fine.
Vincent looked at the menu and saw the options to activate it, deactivate it, or just deactivate the head. Good for scaring Xenos senseless, perhaps. Weapons? He asked, and she picked up his magnum, tucking it into a holster across his chest.
There's very little storage space. That was custom made. The materials this suit uses are very expensive. But we've got a knife for you to use made of a metallic version.
She tapped his thigh and he reached down, feeling the handle before tugging it up and free. Christ, that's not a knife, that's a short sword, he muttered as he stared at the blade, which had to be at least 35 centimeters and obviously designed for killing. This wasn't a multi-purpose tool.
Make sure you only sheath it in that case. The edge has been worked to as fine a point as we can make it. It's extremely sharp.
He glanced around for a moment, but didn't see anything he particularly wanted to try cutting in half, so he carefully sheathed the blade and then activated the camo. Everything looked the same to him, but he saw Zerny take a step back and then vanish herself.
Nervous? Please come in here,
she said. And after a few moments, one of the satyrs stepped into the pod and looked around. What the satyr muttered. With that silver helmet, Vincent couldn't see his face, but he was sure the commando was confused as hell. Then Vincent deactivated his camo and saw the satyr flinch, raising his weapon for a moment before catching himself. The suit seems to work, he said dryly, which made Vincent smile. Do I need to worry about this thing running out of juice or anything? He asked as Zerny also became visible once more.
You've got 12 hours charge, so hopefully not.
He nodded and then moved forward, waiting for the satyr to step out of the doorway before he stepped through. He brought up the last map of the estate they had in his mask and looked over the layout for a moment. If he was reading it right, then they weren't far from the service entrance. He'd have to get in through there and take it up to the main floor before simply trying to figure out where to go from there. Before he went any further, though, he needed to check on his team. He'd left that channel muted unless Frey pinged him directly, but he couldn't help but worry. He activated the channel then. "Mama Bull, this is Phoenix." "Reading you, Phoenix," he heard her grunt out, and could make out weapons fire in the background. "How's the siege?" His stomach started to lurch a bit at the thought of his team fighting without him. "This structure is exceptionally well suited to our needs, but they're throwing quite a lot at us. I haven't seen Jib in quite some time, but every so often something explodes, so I know he's still alive." "Shark 1! Rooftops! 3 down!" There was a pause for a moment, and then Frey came back on. "I also haven't seen Eyes or Gargoyle." They took their own position. If it looks like someone important drops every so often, that's them," Vincent mentioned. Then they're still active. Lun's got hit, then Hun's got hit trying to drag Lun's in, but they're both still active. Witch Doctor patched them up, got them on her feet. Shit! Heavy lifter! There was an explosion in the background. Never mind. Nice shot, Shark 2. Can you keep holding? Vincent asked. For now, yes. Whenever they attack all together, they get blown up or strafed, so they're hunkering down. Maybe trying to get back up, I don't know. But the building is still secure. I'd really like it if you could shut the preacher up, though. His sermons are starting to get annoying. Trust me, I'm working on that as quickly as possible, Vincent promised. Then stop talking to me and get back to work, Frey said, which made him blink. Mama Bull out. Phoenix out, he said, and muted the channel. He took a breath and then nodded at the Satyr team, before activating the camo and moving forward. The cargo bay gave way to a nondescript hallway, followed by 2 more cargo bays and halls, until he finally got to the one he wanted. He could already see how different it was, because the cargo area was fairly bare, and there were 4 howlers inside with weapons holstered. They looked like private security, but he didn't know of any private security firms that operated this high in the city, and used only howlers. I heard the lower sectors are getting pretty rowdy right now, he heard one of them say before the others chuckled. Once this is over, we'll have free run of the upper sectors, I think. Starting with those stupid college kids upstairs. I've already got one picked out. They were all confident as they snickered and laughed. Vincent simply walked through the group. He didn't take any special effort to crouch or move slowly either, since he wanted to test the suit out. Just a casual walking pace. He did make sure not to get within a meter of the guards, though. Once he got to the lift at the far wall, he looked it over and didn't see any security features, so he simply pressed the button to call the elevator. That drew attention as 2 of them looked back. What? Someone coming down? He noticed how the others positioned themselves facing the lift, hands on their weapons. When the doors were opened and no one was inside, the closest guard stepped forward and looked in. A glitch, maybe? Vincent stepped in as the howlers stepped out, and pressed the button for the highest floor he saw on the list. The guard looked back around as the door closed, but didn't stop it. The lift rose up to floor... He checked 3, and stopped. The doors opened and he saw another howler, this one behind a desk reading something on a data slate. He looked up, obviously confused. Vincent stepped out as the howler walked around his desk and then looked inside. After a moment he shrugged and returned to his seat and his reading. Vincent wanted to compliment the suit, but he didn't know if his talking would be audible, so he held off. So far, this was way easier than he expected. Mach had said this was only close to true invisibility. He wondered how much closer they could get. He was above the floor he had seen more of earlier, and he quickly checked his location on the map. It was a bit disorienting to follow the map in his vision, while also making sure not to actually run into anyone in the hallways, but he got the hang of it soon enough. When he found one of the secure doors deeper into the estate, he finally came across an obstacle simple invisibility couldn't solve. 2 howlers were guarding it, and he could see it needed a keycard of sorts. He spotted one on the howler's belts, but didn't see a way to take it without them knowing. Licking his lips, he carefully pulled the knife from his thigh. He couldn't see the thing, but a faint outline in his visor told him where it was. Reaching out, he gently held onto the security card and rubbed the knife against the lanyard holding it in place. The material didn't even slow the blade as he cut through it, and all the Howler did was idly scratch his chin. Vincent took a breath and kept the knife in hand before sliding the keycard through the door lock, which turned green. No audible noises he could hear, and the guards facing away didn't react. Very carefully, he turned the handle and opened the door just wide enough to slip in before pushing it shut behind him. No alarms, no shouting. He let out a deep sigh and holstered the blade, very carefully. Now he was heading into an area not on the blueprints that he could find. The halls weren't filled with paintings or decorative moldings. These were bare, obviously functional-minded halls with secure-looking doors. Thankfully, however, there were signs. He examined them for a moment. Armory, briefing room, mess hall, library. Library? Really? He didn't see anything that really stood out to him, and looked over the options before moving towards the briefing room. He followed the arrows pointing, and soon found a small conference room with 5 of the gray-armored satyr inside. They were facing a screen on the wall, speaking to a dragon he'd never seen before. He was dark purple with green along his throat, but he didn't look very healthy. There was something strange about his flesh as well. The scales didn't gleam like moths. They were dull, and he could swear something was making them ripple here and there. It made Vincent's skin crawl. Finally, he started paying attention to what was being said.
Of course, my honored lord. I told him that the shade is essential to our plans, but he holds some sort of grudge. It also seems likely that the plans for the shade won't work as intended.
I'm aware, but we don't wish to use Plan B so soon. His memories are showing actions that are not in line with our projected behavior. But that damn lab isn't ready, you simpleton!
The dragon was pissed about something.
We could check in on the team, my honored lord,
the satyr was replying.
It's been several weeks since the last check-in. Perhaps we could call.
No! Keeping that lab secret and secure is difficult enough. If the AI discovers it, then all will be for naught. Go in person.
The dragon typed something on a console, and the lead satyr picked up a small device from the console before him.
That's the authorization codes and location. Get it done.
Of course, my honored lord. Shall I tell the preacher to stop his sermon, so as not to further endanger the shade in the building?
No. I'm watching the siege now. They're in no position to defeat the Shade's forces yet. Let them wear each other down. The conflict might bring him back in line. Get to the lab before anything else goes wrong, however.
Of course, my honored lord.
The satyr bowed, before the dragon snorted and cut the feed. During this, Vincent had walked down into the group of satyr, knife drawn. When the leader turned around to face the other 4, Vincent was standing right in front of him.
You heard him. We've got a job to do. We need to see if they're done with...
He stepped forward, only to be stopped by Vincent's hand that he couldn't see. The satyr looked down confused, just as Vincent drove the knife down through the Xeno's clavicle area and into the heart. The blade was so sharp he barely had time to gurgle before blood welled up from the cut and he collapsed. The other satyr gasped in surprise and confusion, weapons up as Vincent turned, driving the blood-splattered knife through the faceplate of the next closest Xeno, which quickly collapsed. He then ducked as 2 of them shot at the empty air and into each other, before cutting the hand off of one using the energy weapon to shoot the other. As the now unarmed satyr screamed and clutched at his stump, the last turned and ran towards a red button on the wall. Vincent quickly yanked his magnum free with one hand, seeing the metal gun clearly before he pulled the trigger. The bullet smashed the Xeno forward against the wall, which he bounced off and then landed on the floor. But the button hadn't been hit. The threat ended. Vincent turned and shot the handless satyr to end his suffering and finish the fight. He stood still for a moment in the middle of the dead satyr and waited for more guards to rush in or satyr to show up, but none came. So he wiped the blade off on one of the dead satyr and then sheathed it before holstering his magnum. Crouching down, he spoke while prying the small device he'd seen from the hands of the Satyr's squad leader.
I guess you guys spared no expense with the soundproofing. Your contractor did an excellent job.
He held up a small module that had an emblem on it he was unfamiliar with, but it wasn't a black box. He tucked that into one of the other small pockets the suit had, and stood up.
And now to find out who the fuck is your boss.
He looked around at the dead bodies.
No hints? Fine, I'll go ask the preacher.
Even as he headed for the exit, he knew that was a lie. The only thing he'd do when he found the preacher was cut the fucker's tongue out, and he sure as hell had the knife to do it.